Have you ever found yourself pondering over the fundamental questions of human existence? Who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? If you have, you've unknowingly delved into the realm of existentialism, a philosophy that places human individual existence, freedom, and choice at its center. Imagine you're floating in the endless cosmos, gazing down at the world, a tiny sphere amidst an infinite expanse. All the successes, all the failures, the entire human experience condensed into this one small dot. It's overwhelming, right? It might even seem absurd, but don't despair, because that sense of insignificance is precisely where existentialism begins. Existentialism, in its simplest terms, is a philosophy concerned with finding the self and the meaning of life through free will, choice, and personal responsibility. It rejects the idea that the universe inherently holds any truths or meaning about our individual lives. Rather, it suggests that it's up to each of us to give our own life meaning, to navigate this vast, uncaring universe where established structures or morals offer no easy paths. This philosophy originated in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, born out of the chaos and disillusionment following World War II. It was a philosophical rebellion, one that sought to explore the human condition in a world that appeared increasingly absurd. Among the many philosophers who contributed to this thought-provoking field, two names are particularly prominent and will serve as our guiding stars throughout this exploration: Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. Jean-Paul Sartre, the renowned French philosopher, is often seen as the pivotal figure in existentialist thought. His belief that existence precedes essence encapsulates the idea that we come into the world without predefined purpose or nature, and that we must create our essence through our choices and actions. In Sartre's view, we are not born with a specific mission or inherent meaning. Rather, we find ourselves in a seemingly arbitrary world, and it becomes our existential responsibility to shape our destiny and give our life its unique meaning. Then we have Albert Camus, another French philosopher who, while often associated with existentialism, preferred to identify his philosophy as absurdist. For Camus, the universe is indifferent to our struggles, our joys, our existence. But rather than spiraling into despair, he saw this recognition as a starting point to create our own meaning, to rebel against the absurdity and embrace the freedom it offers. We'll be diving deep into their philosophies, unpacking their key concepts, and exploring how their ideas can provide valuable insight into our own lives. Because isn't that the ultimate goal? To understand and navigate our existence in this grand cosmos. Welcome to our journey into the heart of existentialism, a journey where we may not find easy answers, but will undoubtedly uncover thought-provoking questions about life, freedom, and personal responsibility. The roots of existentialism, while firmly planted in the 19th and 20th centuries, stretch back much further, drawing nourishment from the rich philosophical soil of the past. The philosophy's emphasis on individual experience, freedom, and the meaning of existence can be traced to the works of thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche. Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher in the mid-19th century, is often hailed as the first existentialist thinker. He emphasized the importance of individual experience and personal responsibility, arguing against the trend of philosophical abstraction and insisting on the centrality of the individual's direct lived experience. He argued that truth is subjectivity, meaning that the most significant truths, especially those concerning ethics and religion, are deeply personal and subjective. On the other hand, we have Nietzsche, the iconoclastic German philosopher who fiercely criticized the established values of his time. Nietzsche's philosophy echoed the existentialist theme of individualism. He emphasized the creative, life-affirming individual who defies conventional morality to create their own values. Despite these early roots, existentialism, as we understand it today, came into its own in the aftermath of the Second World War, a time that witnessed cataclysmic despair, loss, and a crisis of identity. It was a period where previously held societal and philosophical certainties were upended, forcing humanity to reassess its place in the world. In this context, existentialism's emphasis on personal freedom, the responsibility of choice, and the search for authentic existence resonated deeply. The core tenet of this philosophy, that existence precedes essence, countered the traditional philosophical view that essence or a set nature precedes existence. This revolutionary idea suggested that we are born without a predetermined purpose or nature, and that it's our responsibility to define ourselves through our actions and choices. Simone de Beauvoir, another significant existentialist thinker, echoed this sentiment in her seminal work, The Second Sex, where she examined the existentialist dilemma through the lens of women's experience, thus connecting existentialism with the growing feminist movement. The existentialist philosophy was also profoundly influenced by the rapidly changing political landscape. The rise of totalitarian regimes, the horrors of the Holocaust, and the nuclear threat led to a profound sense of fear, uncertainty, and alienation, which was echoed in existentialist works. Finally, it's essential to highlight the cultural landscape, notably the fields of literature and art, which significantly influenced existentialism. Existential themes are apparent in the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky, Franz Kafka, and Samuel Beckett, whose characters often grapple with despair, isolation, and the absurdity of existence, vividly illustrating existentialist ideas. Thus, existentialism emerged from the convergence of philosophical thought, historical upheaval, and cultural expression, a reaction to the modern world's challenges, pushing individuals to confront their existence's absurdity and find personal meaning amidst the chaos. So having set the historical stage, let's now move on to the central figures of our exploration, Sartre and Camus. Their philosophies, born out of this tumultuous period, continue to challenge and inspire us as we navigate the complexities of our own lives. Jean-Paul Sartre, born in 1905 in Paris, France, was a man of many talents. He was a philosopher, novelist, playwright, and critic, with an influence that extended far beyond the confines of academic philosophy. He is widely recognized as the leading figure of the existentialist movement. Orphaned at a young age, Sartre was raised by his grandparents. He excelled academically and attended a prestigious university in Paris. There he met lifelong companion Simone de Beauvoir, a formidable intellectual in her own right, and formed a radical, open relationship that would challenge societal norms. Sartre served as a meteorologist in the French army during World War II and was captured by German forces in 1940. His experiences of war and imprisonment profoundly shaped his philosophical outlook, fueling his deep engagement with questions of freedom, responsibility, and the meaning of life. One of Sartre's most significant contributions to existentialist philosophy is his assertion that existence precedes essence. This idea counters traditional philosophy, which generally posits that things have a defined essence or nature, which determines their purpose. In contrast, Sartre argues that human beings first exist, encounter themselves, and only then define their essence or nature. This idea is closely tied to Sartre's notion of radical freedom. For Sartre, each individual is radically free and responsible for their actions. Since there is no predetermined human nature or external source of value, every action a person takes helps define what it means to be human. This freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying. It allows limitless potential for self-definition but also demands total responsibility for one's life and choices. Yet, as Sartre notes, humans often seek to avoid the anxiety of this freedom by pretending they are not free, a behavior he termed bad faith. By blaming our circumstances, genetics, or societal expectations, we deny our freedom and responsibility. For Sartre, acknowledging our freedom is the first step toward authentic existence. Sartre's philosophy also engages deeply with the concept of nothingness. In his seminal work, Being and Nothingness, he grapples with the idea of consciousness as a form of nothingness, separating us from the world and allowing us the freedom to transcend our situation. This perspective frames the human condition as a paradoxical tension between being and nothingness, a struggle that defines our existence. Furthermore, Sartre discusses the concept of the look or the gaze of the other. He believed that our awareness of other people's perception of us can lead to a feeling of objectification, encapsulated in his famous phrase, "Hell is other people." For Sartre, this is not a dismissal of all interpersonal relationships, but rather a commentary on how the awareness of others' perspectives can confine our freedom. Sartre's philosophy is deeply intertwined with his commitment to political activism and social justice. He saw philosophy not merely as an academic exercise, but as a tool for critiquing and transforming society. His existentialism was a philosophy of action, urging individuals to recognize their freedom and use it to challenge injustice and create a more authentic existence. Being and Nothingness, published in 1943, is perhaps Sartre's most influential work. It is an intricate and profound exploration of phenomenology and existentialism, featuring a detailed analysis of human consciousness, freedom, and the nature of existence. In Being and Nothingness, Sartre differentiates between two types of being. First, the being in itself, akin to the objective existence of inanimate objects, devoid of consciousness, and second, the being in itself, which refers to the subjective existence of conscious beings, our state of being. It's within the being in itself where Sartre identifies the essence of human existence, freedom. Sartre suggests that we as human beings are fundamentally free because we are not fixed beings, but rather becomings. Our consciousness, our nothingness, separates us from the world, thus allowing the capacity to question, to negate, and to imagine realities other than what is. This freedom to transcend the is, to envisage the what could be, is the heart of Sartre's existentialism. To illustrate, consider this quote from Being and Nothingness. "Man is not the sum of what he has, but the totality of what he does not yet have, of what he could have." This profound statement underscores Sartre's view of man as a perpetually incomplete project, his existence defined not by his past or present state, but by his future possibilities, his potential to change, create, and redefine his essence. Shifting to Nausea, Sartre's first novel and another cornerstone of his philosophical thought. Published in 1938, Nausea introduces us to Antoine Roquentin, a man gripped by a profound existential crisis, a feeling of nausea as he confronts the absurdity and meaninglessness of existence. Through Roquentin's existential anguish, Sartre explores themes of alienation, freedom, and the absence of objective meaning. Roquentin's realization that the world is indifferent to his existence, that his life carries no inherent purpose, initially leaves him in despair, a feeling Sartre describes as nausea. This term encapsulates the profound discomfort that can come with recognizing the fundamental absurdity of existence. Consider this excerpt from Nausea. "Every existing thing is born without reason, prolongs itself out of weakness, and dies by chance." This unsettling realization encapsulates the angst of Roquentin's, and by extension, our existential predicament. In a world devoid of intrinsic meaning, how do we cope? How do we live? The answer for Sartre lies in the freedom that this absurdity affords us. The absence of inherent meaning doesn't necessitate despair, rather it opens a realm of possibilities. It allows us, compels us even, to create our own purpose, to define our essence through our actions and choices. This theme is echoed in another quote from Nausea. "I am free. there is absolutely no more reason for living. All the ones I've tried have given way, and I can't imagine more of them. I have to build them myself. It is a clear call to action, a recognition of the overwhelming yet liberating responsibility we bear to construct our meaning in a world that refuses to offer it readily. Sartre's works, such as Being and Nothingness and Nausea, present a bold and nuanced exploration of human existence. They challenge us to face the disquieting reality of our freedom and the absence of objective meaning, while empowering us to embrace our role as the creators of our essence. Albert Camus, born in 1913 in French Algeria, grew up amidst extreme poverty, which would shape his political consciousness and empathy for the marginalized. He was a brilliant student, earning a scholarship to the University of Algiers, where he studied philosophy and developed a passion for theater, journalism, and political activism. Camus moved to France just before the outbreak of World War II and became active in the French resistance, using his position as editor of the underground newspaper Combat to voice his opposition to fascism. It was this blending of philosophy, literature, and political activism that characterized Camus' career and informed his distinctive philosophical outlook. Though Camus is often associated with existentialism, he famously rejected the label, instead preferring to describe his philosophy as a philosophy of the absurd. Camus argued that life's inherent absurdity comes from the conflict between our human desire for meaning, order, and clarity, and the silent, indifferent universe that offers none. At the heart of Camus' philosophy lies his concept of the absurd, which he explores in depth in his essay The Myth of Sisyphus. Drawing from the ancient Greek myth, Camus likens the human condition to the fate of Sisyphus, doomed to eternally roll a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down again. Like Sisyphus, we must confront the absurdity of our existence, the seemingly futile cycle of life and death in an indifferent universe. Yet Camus does not see this absurdity as a cause for despair. On the contrary, he believed that acknowledging the absurd liberates us to live fully and authentically. In his words, the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Camus also posited the idea of revolt as a response to absurdity. By consciously choosing to continue living in spite of life's absurdity, we enact a form of personal revolt, affirming our existence and dignity. This idea of revolt is also present in his political beliefs, where he advocated for justice and rebellion against oppression. Another key aspect of Camus' philosophy is the emphasis on personal meaning and morality. Despite the lack of objective meaning or universal moral laws, Camus believed that we could and should create our personal values. For Camus, these values often revolved around simple human joys and sensual experiences: the sun on his face, the beauty of the Mediterranean landscape, the companionship of friends. This emphasis on the sensual and tangible is encapsulated in his novel The Stranger, where the protagonist Meursault lives entirely in the physical realm. Yet even in embracing the physical, Camus didn't dismiss the importance of moral integrity. In a universe devoid of inherent meaning or moral law, Camus saw personal responsibility as paramount. This moral responsibility, however, was not founded on divine decree or societal norms, but a personal commitment to live authentically and resist injustice. Camus offers a philosophy of the absurd that is both sobering and empowering. His philosophy challenges us to confront the absurdity of our existence while inspiring us to affirm our lives through personal revolt and the creation of individual meaning. The Stranger, published in 1942, is Camus' first novel and arguably his best-known work. Told through the lens of the protagonist Meursault, the novel explores the themes of absurdity, indifference, and rebellion, key pillars of Camus' philosophy. In the novel, Meursault, a French Algerian, leads an emotionally detached life, responding to the world around him with an almost apathetic indifference. When his mother dies, he displays no grief, and when he commits an act of senseless violence, he shows no remorse. His emotional disconnection from the world is reflected in his indifference to societal expectations and norms, embodying Camus' notion of the absurd man. An essential excerpt to understand Camus' thoughts can be found in the courtroom scene where Meursault states, "I had lived my life one way and I could just as well have lived it another. I had done this and I hadn't done that. I hadn't done this thing, but I had done another. And so?" This statement encapsulates the essence of his character and Camus' philosophy of absurdism. Life, for Meursault, is a series of arbitrary choices devoid of intrinsic meaning. While this view might seem nihilistic, for Camus, the acknowledgement of life's absurdity doesn't lead to despair or inaction. Rather, it opens up the possibility of a liberated existence, unshackled from the constraints of societal norms and expectations. Camus drives this point home when Meursault is condemned to death. At this juncture, he experiences a radical shift in perspective, declaring, "I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother really. I felt that I had been happy, and that I was happy again." In the face of death, he chooses to embrace life's absurdity and experiences a sense of kinship with the indifferent universe, echoing Camus' call to revolt against the absurd and to affirm life. However, The Stranger isn't simply a narrative of existential angst and rebellion. It also provides a nuanced exploration of morality. Meursault's actions and the societal responses they provoke force us to question the nature of morality, particularly in a universe that offers no inherent moral code. Can there be a sense of right and wrong in an absurd world? If so, how is it defined? Camus doesn't provide easy answers, but prompts us to wrestle with these questions ourselves, urging us to take responsibility for creating our personal moral compass. This theme is reflected in the book's final lines, as Meursault muses, "For everything to be consummated, for me to feel less alone, I had only to wish that there be a large crowd of spectators the day of my execution, and that they greet me with cries of hate." The Stranger offers a vivid portrayal of Camus' philosophy of the absurd. Through the main character, we confront the indifference of the universe and the arbitrary nature of existence, yet are also challenged to affirm our lives, establish our morality, and embrace the freedom that the absurd offers. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus elucidates his philosophy of the absurd with greater depth and precision. He begins the essay with the provocative claim, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide." From there, he delves into an exploration of life's inherent absurdity and how we might navigate a world that appears meaningless. The title itself is a reference to a figure from Greek mythology, Sisyphus, who was punished by the gods to endlessly roll a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down, repeating this task for all eternity. For Camus, Sisyphus embodies the human condition. We strive and labor in life, yet ultimately we face death and the potential meaninglessness of our efforts. However, he argues that acknowledging the absurdity of life does not lead to despair, but rather to a sense of freedom and even happiness. He encourages us to live without hope for a future life or any form of ultimate salvation, stating, "The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." This passage is central to understanding Camus' perspective. Despite life's inherent absurdity, despite the endless labor and inevitable death, Sisyphus can find happiness. How? by embracing the struggle, by acknowledging the absurdity of his task and yet choosing to continue, by living fully in the present and deriving satisfaction from the work itself, not some distant promised reward. Just like Sisyphus, we are tasked with pushing our own boulders, be it work, relationships, dreams, or goals. We too face the uncertainty of our efforts' ultimate significance, the reality of death, and the indifference of the universe. And yet we also possess the ability to affirm life, to find joy in the struggle, and to carve out our personal meaning in the face of the absurd. In the end, the myth of Sisyphus is more than a philosophical essay. It's a call to arms. It urges us to revolt against the absurdity of life by affirming our existence, by choosing to continue despite the lack of inherent meaning, and by finding joy in the struggle itself. This theme of revolt is echoed in another key excerpt, where Camus states, "I draw from the absurd three consequences: my revolt, my freedom, and my passion." By accepting and confronting the absurd, we liberate ourselves from illusions of objective meaning and societal expectations. This leads to authentic living, in which we freely define our values and pursue our passions. The myth of Sisyphus encapsulates the philosophy of the absurd, asserting that life's meaning is not given but made. It is up to us to grapple with the absurd, embrace the struggle of existence, and craft our unique path, much like Sisyphus, with his ceaseless and solitary labor. Camus offers a philosophy of the absurd that is both sobering and empowering. His philosophy challenges us to confront the absurdity of our existence, while inspiring us to affirm our lives through personal revolt and the creation of individual meaning. In our next segment, we'll explore how these existential philosophies of Sartre and Camus can apply to our daily lives, guiding us in our quest for authenticity, freedom, and personal meaning. Having journeyed through the minds of Sartre and Camus, we now turn to the fundamental question: how does existential philosophy relate to our modern life? How can these insights from the mid-20th century help us navigate our lives in the 21st century? To begin with, both philosophers offer a paradigm shift in how we approach life. From Sartre, we are urged to embrace our radical freedom and the responsibility it entails. In a world often driven by external influences, societal norms, family expectations, cultural trends, we are reminded that we possess the freedom to define ourselves, to choose who we are and what we value. This can be seen in the choices we make daily, whether it's our career path, our relationships, our hobbies, or our response to the challenges life presents us. We are not bound by our circumstances, our past, or other people's expectations. We are free to shape our existence and to bear the responsibility for our actions. This perspective can lead to an empowering sense of agency and authenticity. Consider a practical example. You may find yourself working a job that doesn't fulfill you, perhaps chosen due to societal pressure or familial expectations. Sartre's philosophy would encourage you to embrace your freedom, to evaluate your options, and to make a conscious choice about your career path based on your authentic desires and values rather than external pressures. From Camus, we learn to acknowledge and confront the absurdity of life. Rather than seeking solace in illusions of objective meaning or ultimate salvation, we are encouraged to create our personal meaning and values. This can liberate us from the societal rat race and the unending pursuit of externally defined success. Furthermore, Camus' notion of revolt can inspire us to affirm our lives, even amidst adversity and suffering. Consider a situation where you're confronted with a personal setback, like a failure or loss. Camus' philosophy would urge you to confront this adversity head-on, to recognize its absurdity, and to continue striving regardless, thus revolting against the absurd. Applying this to a practical context, Suppose you experience a failure in your personal or professional life. Rather than surrendering to despair or viewing it as a commentary on your self-worth, you could see it as an integral part of life's absurdity and use the experience to grow and reaffirm your commitment to your chosen path. Additionally, the existentialist focus on authenticity encourages us to engage deeply with our passions and interests, enhancing our sense of purpose and fulfillment. In a world often preoccupied with superficial pleasures and distractions, existentialism calls us back to a genuine engagement with life. Existentialism challenges us to take moral responsibility for our actions. In a world devoid of absolute moral laws, we are urged to create our moral compass. This requires introspection, dialogue, and conscious decision-making, promoting a more mindful and engaged approach to ethics. Existentialism invites us to reconsider how we perceive our lives and our search for purpose. By highlighting the lack of inherent meaning and the responsibility each of us has to create our path, existentialism offers a roadmap for those seeking purpose and fulfillment in today's fast-paced, complex world. Let's consider purpose first. In a world where myriad options can often lead to paralysis by analysis, existentialism urges us to lean into this uncertainty, this freedom, and this responsibility to make choices. Sartre's famous quote, "We are our choices," underpins this existential approach to purpose. Rather than seeking an externally defined purpose, existentialism encourages us to forge our purpose through our actions, through the choices we make, and the responsibilities we take on. Imagine you're at a crossroads in your career. You have multiple paths you could take, each with its own set of potential rewards and challenges. Rather than looking outside for answers, existentialism would prompt you to introspect, to understand your true desires and values, and to choose a path aligned with those. Your purpose, then, is not something you find but something you create through your decisions and actions. When it comes to fulfillment, existentialism offers a similarly empowering perspective. The existentialist emphasis on authenticity and engagement with life can lead to a deeper sense of fulfillment. Fulfillment, in this context, is not derived from meeting societal expectations or achieving conventional markers of success. Instead, it arises from living authentically, from choosing your path, from engaging deeply with your passions and interests, and from creating your personal meaning. For instance, you might find fulfillment in pursuing a hobby that brings you joy, even if it doesn't align with traditional notions of success or productivity. Or you might derive fulfillment from contributing to a cause you deeply care about, from building meaningful relationships, or from engaging in continuous learning and personal growth. Both Sartre and Camus assert that we create our life's meaning through our actions and attitudes. This perspective shifts the focus from external validation to internal authenticity. It reminds us that we are not passive spectators, but active participants in our lives. This shift can lead to profound personal growth and a more fulfilling life as we cease to be defined by external circumstances and begin to shape our existence based on our authentic selves. To bring this to life, imagine if you measured success not by how much money you make or how many followers you have on social media, but by how authentically you live, how passionate you are about your work, how deeply you engage with your interests, and how much you grow as an individual. This would lead to a much deeper sense of fulfillment, grounded in authenticity rather than external validation. Moreover, by confronting and embracing life's inherent absurdity, as proposed by Camus, we can also find fulfillment. We cease to view life's challenges, setbacks, and sufferings as interruptions to an otherwise smooth journey. Instead, we see them as integral parts of our existence, opportunities for growth and reaffirmation of our chosen path. In this context, a setback or failure is no longer a barrier to fulfillment, but a part of the journey itself. It's a chance to re-evaluate, to learn, to grow, and to continue on our path with renewed determination and understanding. Existentialism provides us with a powerful lens through which to view our quest for purpose and fulfillment. It doesn't provide us with easy answers or predetermined paths. Instead, it arms us with the tools and perspectives needed to navigate the complexity of life, to make conscious choices, and to create our purpose and fulfillment. The relevance and impact of existentialism are as profound today as they were in the mid-20th century. The existential lens can provide clarity and direction in our increasingly complex and ambiguous world. The philosophies of Sartre and Camus invite us to reflect deeply on our lives, to question our assumptions, and to take active steps in creating our purpose and fulfillment. As we close this chapter, I encourage you, the viewer, to carry these insights with you. Reflect on them, question them, discuss them. Look at your life through the existential lens. Remember, your existence is not defined by external circumstances or pre-existing essences. You have the freedom to shape your existence, to create your meaning, to define your purpose, and to seek your fulfillment. In a world often brimming with uncertainty and chaos, the existential perspective serves as a reminder that we hold the pen that writes our life's story. So as we step out of the world of Sartre and Camus and back into our lives, let's do so with a renewed sense of agency, authenticity, and resolve to live deeply, meaningfully, and authentically.